Maya Thompson stared at her husband's phone, watching him delete photos of another woman while he thought she was asleep. The carousel of images showed intimate moments, expensive gifts, and romantic getaways that had never included her, and Marcus was erasing them with the methodical precision of someone who had done this many times before. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she processed what she was seeing. For 3 years of marriage, she had blamed herself for every fight, every cold shoulder, every moment when Marcus made her feel like she was losing her mind. He had convinced her that her suspicions were paranoid delusions, that her emotional reactions were unstable and embarrassing. But now, watching him casually destroy evidence of his betrayal, Maya realized she hadn't been going crazy. She had been living with someone who was systematically driving her there. Maya closed her eyes and pretended to sleep as Marcus finished his digital cleanup and slipped back into bed beside her. His breathing settled into the calm rhythm of someone without a conscience, while Maya's mind raced through years of gaslighting, manipulation, and emotional abuse disguised as love. She had thought Marcus was simply selfish and self-absorbed, a classic narcissist who needed constant admiration and attention. But the cold efficiency with which he had just erased another person from his digital life suggested something far more sinister than narcissism. The next morning, Marcus was his usual charming self, bringing Maya coffee in bed and complimenting her hair with the same practiced warmth he showed everyone else. Maya watched him perform his morning routine of checking his appearance in every reflective surface, adjusting his expensive suit and rehearsing his confident smile. Everything about Marcus was calculated to create the perfect image of a successful, loving husband, but Maya now understood it was all performance designed to hide something darker underneath. Maya had always prided herself on being a good judge of character, but Marcus had fooled her completely. He had pursued her with overwhelming intensity, showering her with attention and gifts until she felt like the luckiest woman alive. Then, gradually, he had begun isolating her from friends and family, convincing her that they were jealous of their perfect relationship. He had subtly undermined her confidence at work until she quit her job to focus on their marriage, making her financially dependent on him. Every step had felt like her choice, but Maya now realized she had been systematically trapped. The woman in the photos haunted Maya's thoughts throughout the day. She looked young, probably in her early 20s, with the same trusting smile Maya remembered wearing during their early courtship. Maya wondered if this girl had any idea what she was dealing with, or if she would spend the next 3 years questioning her own sanity like Maya had. The thought of Marcus destroying another person the way he had destroyed her filled Maya with a rage that surprised her with its intensity. Maya spent the afternoon researching the differences between narcissists and psychopaths, trying to understand what exactly she had married. Narcissists, she learned, were driven by an insatiable need for admiration and validation, often lacking empathy but still capable of genuine emotions like anger, hurt, and even love in their own twisted way. Psychopaths, however, were fundamentally different. They felt no genuine emotions at all, viewing other people as objects to be manipulated for their own benefit. As Maya read clinical descriptions of psychopathic behavior, she felt a chill of recognition. The superficial charm that had swept her off her feet, the way Marcus could instantly adapt his personality to match what anyone wanted to see, his complete lack of guilt or remorse when confronted with his lies. These weren't the traits of a narcissist seeking validation. These were the calculated tools of a predator who saw human emotions as weaknesses to be exploited. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Working late again tonight. Don't wait up, beautiful." She stared at the message, knowing he was probably with the young woman from the photos, and felt something shift inside her. For 3 years, she had tried to fix their marriage by changing herself, by being more understanding, more supportive, more willing to overlook his increasingly cruel behavior. But you couldn't fix someone who wasn't broken. You could only survive them. That evening, alone in their perfectly decorated house that had become her prison, Maya made a decision that would change everything. She wasn't going to confront Marcus or demand explanations or try to save their marriage. She was going to document everything, gather evidence, and find a way to escape before he destroyed what was left of her sanity. But first, she needed to warn the other woman, even if it meant putting herself at risk. Maya opened her laptop and began typing a message to the email address she had memorized from Marcus's phone. "You don't know me, but we have something in common," she began, her hands shaking as she chose each word carefully. "We're both involved with Marcus Thompson, and I need to tell you something that might save your life." Maya stared at the cursor blinking after her words, knowing that pressing send would declare war on the most dangerous person she had ever known. Maya hit send on the email and immediately regretted it, her heart racing as she realized there was no taking back her decision to warn Marcus's other victim. She had no idea how this stranger would react to learning she was dating a married man, or whether she would even believe Maya's warnings about Marcus's true nature. All Maya knew was that she couldn't live with herself if she stayed silent while another woman was being systematically destroyed. The response came faster than Maya expected, arriving at 2 in the morning when she couldn't sleep. "My name is Zoe Martinez, and I think you just saved my life," the email began. "I've been dating Marcus for 6 months, and everything you described is happening to me too. The isolation, the gaslighting, the way he makes me question my own memories. I thought I was going crazy, but you've made me realize I'm being driven crazy on purpose." Maya felt a mixture of relief and horror as she read Zoe's response. Relief that she had reached someone before it was too late. Horror at the confirmation that Marcus was actively destroying another person while maintaining the facade of their marriage. Zoe was a graduate student in psychology, which explained why she had recognized the manipulation tactics Maya described. "I've been studying these patterns in my research," Zoe wrote, "but I never thought I was living them." They arranged to meet the next day at a coffee shop across town, both women terrified but determined to understand what they were dealing with. Maya arrived first, her hands shaking as she ordered tea she couldn't drink. scanning every face that entered for someone who might be Zoe. When the young woman finally appeared, Maya's heart broke. She looked exactly like Maya had 3 years ago, hopeful and trusting and completely unaware of the predator circling her life. Zoe slid into the booth across from Maya, her eyes red from crying, but her expression resolute. "I brought something to show you," she said, pulling out her laptop. "I've been documenting everything Marcus does and says, thinking I was building a case study for my thesis. But now I realize I was actually gathering evidence of psychological abuse." The files Zoe showed Maya contained months of recorded conversations, photographed text messages, and detailed notes about Marcus's behavior patterns. Maya felt sick as she listened to recordings of Marcus using the exact same manipulation techniques on Zoe that he had perfected on her. The same phrases, the same escalation patterns, the same way of making his victim feel special and chosen before gradually eroding their self-worth. "He's not just a serial cheater," Maya whispered, the pieces clicking into place. "He's a serial emotional predator who studies his victims and refines his techniques with each new target." Zoe nodded grimly, pulling up research papers on her laptop. "I've been comparing his behavior to clinical profiles of both narcissistic and psychopathic personality disorders. Narcissists are driven by their need for validation. They can be cruel, but their cruelty usually stems from their own insecurity and emotional wounds. Psychopaths are different. They don't hurt people because they're insecure. They hurt people because they enjoy the control and because other people's pain is literally meaningless to them." The conversation that followed was both terrifying and liberating as Maya and Zoe compared their experiences. Marcus had used identical strategies on both women, love bombing them with excessive attention and gifts, then gradually isolating them from support systems, then systematically undermining their confidence and sense of reality. But what made their blood run cold was realizing that Marcus seemed to be running both relationships as concurrent experiments, testing which manipulation techniques were most effective. "He told me I was the only person who truly understood him," Zoe said, her voice hollow. "He said his wife was cold and distant, that their marriage was over in everything but name. He made me feel like I was rescuing him from loneliness." Maya felt nauseous as she recognized the lies. Marcus had told her about previous girlfriends, always painting himself as the victim of women who didn't appreciate his sensitive nature. Maya showed Zoe photos from their wedding day, pointing out how Marcus's smile never reached his eyes even in their most intimate moments. "I thought he was just camera shy," Maya explained. "But looking back, I can see that he was performing happiness rather than feeling it. Everything about our relationship was theater designed to give him what he needed: control, admiration, and a cover story for his real activities." As they talked, both women realized that Marcus wasn't choosing between them. He was using them both to fulfill different psychological needs. Maya provided stability, social respectability, and financial security through her inheritance. Zoe provided novelty, sexual excitement, and the thrill of corrupting someone innocent. Neither relationship was real to him. They were both just resources to be exploited until they were no longer useful. "The scary part," Zoe said, closing her laptop with shaking hands, "is that I think we're not his first victims, and we won't be his last. Someone this skilled at psychological manipulation has been practicing for years. He's probably destroyed other women before us, and he'll definitely destroy more after us unless we stop him." Maya felt a chill as she realized that Marcus's perfect house, perfect job, and perfect reputation were all built on a foundation of systematically destroyed lives. Maya and Zoe spent the rest of the afternoon planning their next move, both understanding that they were no longer just trying to escape Marcus. They were trying to expose a predator who had been operating with impunity for years. They decided to pool their evidence and research other women who had been in Marcus's orbit, looking for a pattern of victims who might be willing to speak out. As Maya drove home to face another evening of Marcus's performance, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: hope. For the first time since her marriage began, she wasn't facing her abuser alone. Maya returned home that evening to find Marcus in their kitchen, preparing dinner with the same meticulous attention to detail he applied to everything in his life. He greeted her with a kiss that made her skin crawl now that she understood the calculation behind every gesture of affection. "How was your day, beautiful?" he asked, and Maya forced herself to smile and lie, knowing that her survival depended on maintaining the illusion that nothing had changed. Over dinner, Marcus entertained her with stories about his co-workers, his voice animated and his expressions perfectly calibrated to seem engaged and caring. Maya watched him perform, noting details she had never noticed before: the way his eyes remained cold even when he laughed, the way he tested different emotional reactions to see which ones got the strongest response from her, the way he subtly probed for information about her activities and emotional state. "You seem different tonight," Marcus observed, his tone light but his gaze sharp, more relaxed somehow. "Did something good happen today?" Maya's blood chilled as she realized that Marcus was constantly monitoring her psychological state, cataloging every change in her behavior for signs that his control might be slipping. She forced herself to maintain steady eye contact as she lied about spending the day shopping and getting a massage, activities that would explain her improved mood without raising suspicion. That night, after Marcus fell asleep with the same untroubled breathing of someone without a conscience, Maya quietly accessed his laptop using the password she had memorized months earlier. What she found in his meticulously organized files made her stomach turn with horror and rage. Marcus wasn't just manipulating her and Zoe, was running a systematic operation targeting vulnerable women across multiple cities. The files contained detailed psychological profiles of dozens of women, complete with their vulnerabilities, insecurities, and optimal manipulation strategies. Marcus had categorized his targets by type: validation seekers who craved approval, caretakers who needed to feel needed, damaged goods who had histories of abuse, and high-value assets who had money or social connections he could exploit. Maya found herself filed under inherited wealth, long-term investment, while Zoe was classified as graduate student intellectual challenge. Maya discovered that Marcus maintained active relationships with at least 6 women across 3 states, each one carefully compartmentalized and served different lies about his identity and circumstances. To some, he was a successful entrepreneur going through a difficult divorce. To others, he was a widower slowly learning to love again. Each persona was crafted to perfectly match what his target most wanted to hear, and Marcus kept detailed notes about which emotional triggers worked best on each victim. The most disturbing files contained Marcus's analysis of his retired assets, women he had discarded after extracting maximum value from them. Maya read clinical descriptions of psychological breakdowns, suicide attempts, and financial ruin that Marcus had caused, all documented with the detached interest of a scientist studying lab rats. One entry made Maya's hands shake. Subject attempted suicide after discard phase. Hospitalized for 3 weeks. Excellent data on breaking point thresholds. Maya realized she was looking at the work of someone who wasn't just exploiting women for personal gain. He was conducting psychological experiments on human beings, treating their suffering as research data for refining his manipulation techniques. Marcus was both narcissist and psychopath, combining the narcissist's need for control and admiration with the psychopath's complete lack of empathy and remorse. He was possibly the most dangerous type of predator imaginable. Maya photographed everything she could access before carefully covering her digital tracks and returning to bed. Her mind raced as she processed the scope of Marcus's operation and the number of women whose lives he had systematically destroyed. She thought about the retired assets who had survived his abuse and wondered how many others hadn't been strong enough to endure the psychological warfare he had subjected them to. The next morning, Maya called in sick to work and spent the day reaching out to women from Marcus's files, using social media and public records to track down his previous victims. The conversations that followed were heartbreaking. Women who had been so thoroughly gaslit that they still blamed themselves for their failed relationships with Marcus. Women who had suffered complete psychological breakdowns, women who had lost their careers, their savings, and their ability to trust anyone. But Maya also found survivors who were ready to fight back. Jennifer, a former target from 2 years ago, had spent months in therapy recovering from what she now understood was systematic psychological abuse. "I knew something was wrong," Jennifer told Maya over the phone. "No one destroys someone that methodically by accident. But I could never prove it, and everyone thought I was just bitter about a bad breakup." Maya connected with Dr. Sarah Chun, a forensic psychologist who specialized in studying organized psychological predators. "What you're describing is extremely rare but not unheard of," Dr. Chun explained. "Some individuals develop the ability to combine the manipulation tactics of both narcissistic and psychopathic personality disorders. They're narcissistic enough to crave control and admiration, but psychopathic enough to feel no guilt about the harm they cause in pursuing those needs." By the end of the day, Maya had assembled a network of 12 women across multiple states who had been victimized by Marcus's systematic psychological warfare. Some were still recovering from the trauma he had inflicted. Others were ready to take action. and a few had evidence that could potentially be used to expose his operation. Maya realized that Marcus had made one critical mistake in his otherwise perfect predatory system. He had underestimated the strength that came from survivors connecting with each other. Maya spent that evening planning the next phase of their campaign against Marcus, knowing that she was about to declare war on someone who had spent years perfecting the art of destroying people's lives. But for the first time since discovering his betrayal, Maya felt something stronger than fear. She felt the power that came from turning a predator's greatest weapon against him. Marcus had taught her everything she needed to know about manipulation and psychological warfare, and now she was going to use those lessons to bring him down. Maya woke up the morning of their counterattack with a clarity she hadn't felt in years, knowing that today would either free her from Marcus's psychological prison or destroy what remained of her life. The network of survivors had spent weeks planning their coordinated exposure of Marcus's predatory operation, and Maya felt the weight of their collective hope and determination as she prepared to face the most dangerous person she had ever known. Marcus was already gone when Maya got out of bed, having left early for what he claimed was an important business meeting, but was probably another session of psychological manipulation with one of his current targets. Maya used his absence to make final preparations, hiding cameras throughout their house and setting up automatic uploads of evidence to secure servers that Marcus couldn't access or destroy. If he tried to gaslight her about what was about to happen, she would have undeniable proof of his reactions. At exactly noon, as planned, Maya and 11 other survivors simultaneously posted their stories across social media platforms, complete with evidence, recordings, and documentation of Marcus's systematic psychological abuse. They had coordinated with Dr. Chen to ensure their revelations were accompanied by expert analysis of Marcus's methods, transforming what could have been dismissed as vengeful ex-lovers into a coherent case study of organized psychological predation. Maya's phone exploded with notifications as their story went viral, shared by domestic violence advocates, psychology professionals, and thousands of people who recognized similar patterns in their own relationships. The hashtag Marcus Thompson files began trending as more women came forward with their own experiences, revealing that Marcus's operation was even larger than they had initially discovered. Maya felt a mixture of terror and exhilaration as she watched years of Marcus's careful reputation management crumble in real time. Marcus arrived home at 3 o'clock, his usually perfect composure showing cracks as he stormed through their front door. Maya was waiting in their living room, surrounded by printed evidence of his crimes, no longer pretending to be the submissive victim he had spent 3 years creating. "Hello, Marcus," she said calmly. "I think we need to talk about your work with vulnerable women." For the first time in their relationship, Maya saw genuine emotion cross Marcus's face, not the performed anger he used to manipulate her, but cold, calculating rage at having his control challenged. "You have no idea what you've done," he said, his voice dropping to a tone Maya had never heard before. "Do you think exposing me will make you feel better? Do you think it will undo what I've accomplished with you?" Maya felt a chill as she realized Marcus was right about one thing: 3 years of his psychological conditioning had fundamentally changed her, possibly permanently. But instead of the broken victim he expected to see, Maya had been transformed into something he hadn't anticipated: a survivor who understood his methods well enough to use them against him. "You're right," Maya replied. "I'll never be the same person I was before I married you. But that's not necessarily a bad thing." Marcus began deploying every manipulation technique he had used to control her over the years: gaslighting, emotional blackmail, threats of abandonment, promises of change, and calculated displays of vulnerability designed to trigger her sympathy. Maya watched his performance with clinical detachment, noting how he cycled through different approaches when each one failed to achieve the desired response. It was like watching a computer program run through its coding when faced with unexpected input. "The difference between narcissists and psychopaths," Maya said, standing up to face him directly, "is that narcissists actually care about how others perceive them. Psychopaths only care about control. But you, Marcus, you're something worse. You're both. You need people to adore you, but you feel nothing for the people whose lives you destroy getting that adoration. You're a narcissistic psychopath, which makes you the most dangerous kind of predator." Maya's analysis hit its target, and for a moment, Marcus's mask slipped completely, revealing the cold emptiness beneath his charming exterior. "You think you've won?" he asked, his voice now devoid of any pretense of human warmth. "You think exposing me will somehow validate the pathetic existence you had before I gave your life meaning? I created you, Maya. Everything interesting about you came from me reshaping your personality. Without me, you're nothing." Maya felt the familiar stab of self-doubt that Marcus's words were designed to trigger, but this time she was ready for it. "You're right that you changed me," she admitted. "But you made a critical error in your psychological conditioning. You taught me to recognize manipulation, to analyze human behavior, to see through emotional facades. You turned me into someone who could understand exactly what you are and how you operate. You created your own nemesis." The confrontation that followed was unlike anything Maya had experienced: a psychological battle between someone who had spent years learning to manipulate human emotions and someone who had learned to resist that manipulation through painful experience. Marcus deployed every weapon in his arsenal, but Maya had seen them all before and understood their mechanisms too well to be affected by them. By evening, Marcus's professional life was in ruins. His current victims had been warned and were extracting themselves from his web of lies, and law enforcement was beginning to investigate his activities for potential criminal charges. Maya watched him pack his belongings with the same methodical precision he applied to everything, noting that even in defeat, Marcus remained fundamentally incapable of genuine emotion or self-reflection. Marcus left without another word, carrying his suitcases out to a car Maya had never seen before, probably belonging to whatever identity he was planning to assume next. Maya realized he would likely disappear, reinvent himself, and begin the process of finding new victims in a different city where no one knew about his exposed operation. But at least now there was a documented record of his methods, a network of survivors who could recognize and warn others about his tactics, and a growing awareness of how narcissistic psychopaths operated in the dating world. Maya stood in the doorway of her house, truly her house now, not their house, and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: the possibility of authentic happiness. The woman Marcus had tried to destroy was gone forever, but in her place was someone stronger, wiser, and more capable of genuine human connection than she had ever been before. Maya had learned that surviving a psychological predator required becoming someone new, someone who could never again be victimized by manipulation and lies. 6 months later, Maya was working with Dr. Chen to develop educational programs about psychological predators, helping other survivors recognize and escape abusive relationships, and slowly learning to trust her own perceptions again. She understood now that the choice between narcissists and psychopaths was a false one. The real danger came from predators who combined the worst traits of both, and the only defense against them was knowledge, community, and the hard-won wisdom that came from surviving their psychological warfare. Maya's story spread beyond social media to become part of academic research, criminal justice training, and domestic violence prevention programs. She had transformed her victimization into a powerful tool for protecting others, proving that even the most sophisticated psychological manipulation could be overcome by human resilience, collective action, and the refusal to remain silent about predatory behavior. If Maya's journey from victim to survivor to advocate resonates with you, please subscribe for more stories that expose the psychology of manipulation and celebrate human resilience. Share this with someone who needs to understand the difference between narcissists and psychopaths, and comment below about which part of Maya's transformation inspired you most. Your engagement helps these important stories reach people who need to hear them, and together we can build awareness that protects others from psychological predators who operate in plain sight.